Well, hello and welcome back, everyone. So we had a short-lived adventure in the car. We got the car running. That was great. I drove around for a little while. Didn't have any issues. I was in a hurry one day on my way to work, and I was kind of pushing it a little bit, which, we're in the break-in period. We're not really supposed to be doing that. Well, I guess maybe that reinforces the fact that I'm not supposed to be doing that. Unfortunately, I found this in the bottom of the engine bay. Not beautiful. So basically, the top idler pulley exploded and just separated itself from the bearing, cut the belt. That was all she wrote. So on my setup, the belt runs literally everything except for the air conditioner. So I lost power, I lost water. So I had to limp the car home. I think the hottest I saw was like 250 degrees, which, it's hot, but it's not too hot. It didn't even boil over. So having said that, the car's back in the shop now, which is fine, which is great. Didn't have to tow it. So as I've discussed previously, the radiator leaks. It leaks just a little bit. It's too much. I don't want to drive the car and put a huge load on it for a week and hope that it doesn't leak all the coolant out. The water pump is also leaking out of the weep hole, which is not really surprising. So new radiator, new water pump. I need to replace the bottom idler for the air conditioner because the belt cut on the first startup. So we'll get those on there. And then the small things I need to button up. So this is a 102 throttle body. This is a stock LSA inlet. Technically, this is not supposed to fit. I did some looking and I squared it up just right so that the throttle blade actually fits inside of the 90 millimeter opening that's on there from the factory. But what I'm going to do is, and I'll show you a picture here, it's actually like when you open the throttle, you can see maybe a 1/4 inch lip all the way on the inside of the throttle body. It was my intention to hog that out and make it just kind of a smooth path for the 102. Granted, this is not the same as porting. This is just opening up and getting all the potential possible, right? So the intake piping is 4 inch. The interior of the 102 is about 4 inch. So that whole thing is just gonna flow how it should. I have it, it was cheap, it was $57 on Amazon. Pretty good throttle body, I literally did nothing to it. I think I'm gonna change out the IAC and the TPS from my factory ones because I don't think this responds fast enough. It's either that or everything's getting a weird pressure wave from that wall being in there. But either way, it needs fixed. And this is the perfect time because I gotta take everything off to get the radiator out, and it's the perfect time to take the front snout of the LSA off. So we got some welding. Unfortunately, the radiator is painted, so I'm gonna have to strip the paint off where I need to weld it. But let's go look at those real quick. This is a really cheap, I think it's DNA Motoring, if you've ever heard of them through Amazon or eBay. This is just a cheap aluminum radiator. So these fan brackets are probably okay. There's fan brackets on the backside, which I thought was weird, so I was gonna get cut off. And then I don't need this port. It literally won't fit. And then I gotta cut this, we'll call it a nipple. The power steering or the transmission cooler there, I gotta cut this off because I don't have a plug for it, or just weld a closeout. So here's the air conditioner idler, brand new gates, brand new belt, brand new water pump. So on this guy, everything looks great on it except these outlets. I have AN on mine, so I'm gonna have to like pull these out, tap them, and then get all that squared away. Shouldn't be too bad, but just another thing to do. So there's what we're doing. So we'll get the time lapse on. I will start tearing the engine apart, or tearing the front of the engine apart so I can get the fan out, because I need to see if the fan fits on there the way it is. Because if it doesn't, I'm gonna have to make some new brackets. And yeah, there it is. Well, we got the fan out and we are trying to fit it on this new radiator. This tab and these two on this side are perfect, right here and there. But this guy is just about as far off as it could be. So obviously I'm gonna have to cut this guy off and move it up, which is fine. I'm not the best at aluminum, but I have a few videos that I watched where I think I might know how to get better, so we'll see. So I got the old radiator out, as you saw. I got everything out, and I've kind of made some adjustments already. So this radiator's a little bit thicker. There was some welds on the bottom on this driver's side that I had to kind of take down to flush. They welded on the anchors for the fan, like just so far off the radiator and like way too high. So I cut those off on one side. The other ones are a little bit closer, so I'm gonna see if I can keep those just kind of as a reference mark, and then so I cut them off of the driver's side here. So we'll see if I can get that to work. If nothing else, I'll make some new ones. But the thing I wanted to show you is how close this radiator is, or the fan is, to the power steering. Yeah, so basically, as you can see, this tab's cut off, right? So it's gonna be probably a little bit higher than it is because it's sitting down below the top. It's hooked on the other side, so I can't move it. But anyways, once it's attached, it'll be closer to the radiator, but that's the amount of space we're working with between the power steering pulley and the outside of the fan. So really, the only thing we have to do is NPT, weld a cap on this, or I could just JB weld something actually. Really, the only thing I need to do is weld these on. Strangely, I thought I had a lot more to do there. So what I'm gonna do about keeping it in the car, so I had these bolts here before, right there, rib nuts, both sides. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make probably like a 1/4 inch plate that comes and has a little hook right here. Basically, it's gonna bolt in on these 2 bolts here for the hood support, but it's also gonna bolt everything down. I might make it the length of it and try to box all of this in. I know I'm not doing a good job with the camera. So it'll be the length of this hole here so that all the air goes down, not over. But I want it to be aesthetically pleasing as well. So that's the plan. So I need to go practice my TIG welding. So let's get to it. All right, hello. It's closer to midnight than it really should be, so I'm closing up for the night. But I wanted to give you an update on what's going on. So I was able to dismiss how ugly the actual metal it is, but look at the welds. I was able to kind of dial in my settings to a point where I was pretty happy with it, and it was repeatable. Not this side, obviously, this side. So what I did was I started on the radiator because I was feeling confident. So this used to be a hole, and it's not anymore. I tried using filler. The problem with this is getting around in a circle like this on an oddly shaped radiator that, I shut my video off on accident, on an oddly shaped radiator that doesn't actually conduct electricity. So they painted this thing, so when you lay it on the table, it doesn't actually conduct electricity. So I actually had to put it into the one of the actual radiator ports. It's okay. I think it's gonna hold, you know. I had to get it from all the angles. This did have a little lip on it, so that I know that doesn't look like it's totally welded up, but it is. And I only had to resharpen my tungsten like 6 times. Sorry, this is really hard to do with a front-facing camera. Anyways, you get the gist of it. So the only thing left, so like I said, I'm gonna leave these guys on here. I'm gonna throw the fan on it tomorrow morning, and then I'm gonna try and mark a spot for the actual mounts. I got like all of these cut off. So I'm assuming that one of them, or hopefully 2 of them, will be usable. If not, I have some, sorry, you couldn't see that. If not, I have some additional metal that I can bend up. But right now I'm planning on just grinding one of these and welding that sucker on there. And I think that'll be pretty easy. Aluminum is tough because it's, you know, it's one of those metals that it doesn't look like it's gonna start flowing until it does. And then if you wait like a split second, it just melts and just turns into a marshmallow. So I'm hoping to circumvent that tomorrow. So feeling pretty good. So we'll catch back with you in the morning. Good morning, hello. So we're back at it. We're gonna get these little tabs welded on here. So I just kind of got these snipped up, lowered down a little bit, kind of just fitting them into place. Gonna mark them, get them burnt in, and then this is done. So I don't think there's anything else I really need to do on this. I need to tap for the NPT on the top for the steam vent, but that's really not a big deal. It shouldn't take too long. What I am going to do is start working on taking the front drive off the supercharger today, so that's going to be a little bit of work. I have some carbide bits coming in. Went to Harbor Freight this morning, got myself some new gloves. Look at these hotness compared to these old dogs, which, you know, for 20 bucks, I think I got a pretty good life out of them. I think I've had those for like 2, maybe 3 years. But I got a cheap die grinder. So with the carbide burrs, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run on the inside of the inlet, like I said I was going to. And then the other thing I ordered up was some 1/8 inch aluminum. So I'm going to make that plate that I said I was going to hold the radiator and stuff in place. So that should be here tomorrow. So we got a lot of stuff we can finish. So join me. Okay, so here's an update. So as you saw, I got the NPT for the vent line hooked up. All good there. Got the fan in, we got the radiator in. So one of the things that I've noticed, which I didn't notice initially, is that this outlet is like right up against my AC line. So maybe I can bend that a little bit, just get a hose in there. If not, I don't know, we'll have to see. But the first issue that we have right now is power steering clearance. So the fan is about a 1/4 inch off the radiator, even though right here it's even closer. And that is basically pushing the fan out so that we don't have sufficient clearance. So that is super annoying. So, I mean, my options are few. We can cut that mount off and move it in more, which is probably what I'll do. Yeah, I don't know, what else can I do? It has to be moved. Okay. Okay, after much grinding and sanding and cleaning and a little more sanding, so now we have this guy, which in comparison to this, considerably shorter. It's about as short as it's gonna get, and then possibly still work, so we're just gonna burn this thing in. Not pretty, but hopefully functional. I believe the saying goes, try your best and grind the rest. So we got a little oopsie here when I was using the big die grinder. I didn't realize the collet was hitting the aluminum, so I had to patch that up. There it is, it's attached. Once it cools off, I'll see if the fan even works now. And then if it does, we'll put it in the car. All right. Okay, radiator's back in. We have made small improvements. So the pulley at least spins now. But I think the problem is on the bottom of the fan shroud. It's kind of holding it up off the radiator because it's so tall, like this section here on the bottom. So I think I'm gonna bring that down. I'm gonna also look into spacing the fan. So if I put spacers in between these screws and the actual mounting surface, it'll pull that fan down. And it shouldn't affect anything because there's probably a good inch and a half on the front side of the fan. If you can even see in there. Yeah, you can kind of see in there. Anyways. All right, and another update. So I spaced out the radiator. I cut down the plastic on the bottom side, and now we have some distance here. It's not a ton, but I'd say it's acceptable. We're gonna run with that. So the only other issue is this fitting here, but I think what I can do is maybe loosen it a smidge because this is an AC line and just rotate it down, and I think maybe that'll give me some clearance, but it does move already. It just kind of springs back because there's so much tension. So that'll be the next thing, and I'll let you know if I figured it out. All right, I'm back. A couple hours later, went out for a little hike with the family. Good times. Took the radiator out. Everything looked okay there. We were still pretty tight on this AC line here, so what I did was I loosened it just enough so that it would start turning and then kind of positioned it out of the way. However, this thing kind of moves on its own because it's just a pass-through. So I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. I'll have to put the radiator back in to see if moving it helped at all. But right now I'm gonna take off the snout, which means I need to take off the vent tube because it's totally in the way. So right up against the body of the snout. Hopefully I can make all that fit. And then we'll just pry that bad boy off there. All right, as you just saw, I pulled off the front drive. So this is a 102 sized throttle bracket. So probably just take this all down at an angle and just try and make the whole thing as smooth as possible on the transition. At some point, obviously the whole thing will be ported, but right now that's all we're trying to do. So watch with me. You're on camera here. I'm gonna watch some pass gas, I guess, and hopefully this won't take too long. I got some new carbide burrs. I didn't realize that there were like aluminum specific carbide burrs, so these might get clogged up. So we'll have to play it by ear, but you know, they're brand new at least. And I got a brand new die grinder, so let's get to it. All right, so as you saw, we had pretty good time porting the inlet, which was a bit of a learning curve. So I didn't buy any cartridge rolls, so I can't really smooth this out too much. But the one thing that I learned is that if you use automatic transmission fluid and you continually dip your carbide burr in transmission fluid, it will spin out all of the aluminum shavings, which is really nice because using a wire wheel to clean them was really annoying. So yeah, there it is. You know, like I said, it's not going to turn out amazing, but when you look down the throat of it and get this lined up here, I mean, it's at least tapered, right? Whereas before it was a solid wall. I think it's going to make a pretty decent difference. We will see. So I'm going to clean this mess up and we'll go from there. Good morning, everyone. It's a whole nother day. Here we are. So I got this whole thing brake cleaned off camera, backside as well. So what I'm going to do now is put a little RTV on it, throw it in the car. We can start moving on to something else. So what we got to do is go from non-AN fitting to AN fitting. So I need to tap and drill and do all that to this new water pump. What I wanted to show you was where this was leaking on my old water pump. So if you look, you can actually see it's leaking out of that back plate. I'm gonna take it off and just see exactly what's going on in there. But I'm probably gonna go with F-body spacing on my BMW swap, which by the way, I have it's a 2000 or 99 or 2000 5 Series BMW wagon. I've always wanted a 5 Series wagon. One came up for sale months ago, I think probably like 5 or 6 months ago, and it was like 1,200 bucks. So I'll insert a picture here. Really nice car. I have a whole, you know, I have the T56 that came out of the Nova. I have a 5.3 that I was gonna put in the Ranger. I have another computer. I basically have everything I need. The front end accessory stuff is probably something I'm gonna need, but you know, it's gonna be a little while before I start on that project. I need to get the Nova done, take it to the track, and do all those things first. Yeah, I forgot to add, so I ordered a new pulley from the one that blew up off Amazon, right? It was supposed to be delivered yesterday. A pulley was delivered yesterday, so this is what it's supposed to look like, right? This is an actual machined, I had already purchased this one previously. There's a whole giant bearing in there to support the weight, 8 rib, 10 rib, whatever it is. What showed up was this dinky stamped single bearing junk that actually failed on the last one. So this is not gonna work. So that sucks. That's gonna put me back quite a few days. So I may not end up getting all of this completed. With that in mind, I did find some ideas. I'll insert a picture here of what I'm gonna do for the trailer hitch mount. This, unfortunately, is the wrong size. So I went off of a Google search and it said that the leaf spring bushings were 2 inches. They're 1.5 on my car. So I'm gonna have to send that 2-inch back and get a 1.5. So that's gonna also set me back. But we have enough to do. So as you saw, I got the nipples pulled out, which was really a pain. I used a slide hammer and it just wasn't the easiest thing, but we got it. And I got these tapped in. So the smaller of the two went okay. Unfortunately, when I was tapping the second one, I didn't go deep enough. So I put the tap back in to re-tap a little further and it jumped a tooth. So then we had like half tapped one direction, half tapped the other direction. So I just center in. If it leaks, I'll weld it in. It's all aluminum and it should be fine. Of course, it's got anodizing on it, which would be great if it didn't, but nothing I can do at this point. So so that part's done. We're gonna throw the thermostat housing on there, put this thing back in the car. So a couple things I didn't cover in the previous update. So the lack of a idler and lack of a belt actually are gonna put me behind. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw the water pump in, maybe all the accessories around it that can go in now. And then I'm gonna work on putting the radiator back in and make that shield, because at this point I can't put the front of the engine back together because I'm just missing a few things. But I can fit the radiator and get that done. So that's what we're doing. So as you saw, I was monkeying around down there. I got the idler put back on for the AC. Unfortunately, this is why you don't go off of your Amazon cart as to what belt goes on your car. I had it written down in my notes as a 355 belt. The last belt I bought, which I think was for the 4Runner, is a 410. It does not fit, way too big. So now we're a little bit more behind on that as well. So gonna have to order a different belt. All right, here's the last update for the day. I have got a headache, I gotta get out of here. I don't know if there's fumes or something in the shop, but not feeling it. So water pump is in, the idler bracket is in, snout obviously, the fuel rails all good to go. Got the water pump stuff hooked up. That's usually kind of a pain. Hopefully none of that leaks because once I have everything in here, it's all kind of hard to get to. Howdy. So it's a whole different day. I have all the parts in that I need. We have already started. So I did a little bit of work off camera. The lower belt is on for the air conditioner. Ended up getting the wrong one, a little bit smaller than I needed. Had to fight with it for probably an hour just to get it on there. The idler and everything just was a pain. But it's on, so whatever. Really close to the power steering rack line, which makes me a little nervous, but what are you gonna do? It's in there at least. So at this point, what we're doing, we got the belt on. We got the new idler in and on, which is looking good. It's at least, you know, like an actual machined piece of aluminum with just like a double thickness bearing in it. So I'm hoping to never have any issues with that one. It's actually the same as the one below it. So that's good. New belt, good. Put the intake on. And then we got to get all the hoses on and fill it with water. And then we should be good to go. So I'll be back with you. All right, y'all. So here's an update. Basically everything's in as it should be. The only thing I don't have in is the breather lines. I'm just kind of saving that for last just in case something happens. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna upload the new tune. I made some adjustments. Version 3 of the Terminator software came out a couple days ago. Has some pretty cool features in it. So I made some small adjustments, like the fans not turning on unless the engine's running. I think it's a great one. The last time I had to run a new power wire because of that, because it was pulling too much amperage with the key on. I'll put you on the GoPro and we'll get this thing fired up and just see how it sounds. Thanks. Water in it yet, but that was a good first startup. Here's my update until tomorrow. So I started putting water in. I got a leak out of that upper radiator hose, no problem. Tighten the clamp, all good. Then I got a leak from under the passenger side fender here. That was my heater lines. I forgot to tighten them, no big deal. This one, however, is a big deal. If you'll remember, this side, the larger of the two, the thread started stripping out when I put it in. And I sealed it on the backside hoping that I wouldn't have any issues. Well, of course, it started leaking. So I need to figure out how to fix this. I'm probably gonna take that whole thing off and hopefully I can get a socket in there and just tighten that thing up and see if it stops. Probably won't. Probably end up taking the whole damn water pump off, which really pisses me off. But, you know, here we are. That's cars. All right, so here's a bit of an update. So as I said, this thing was leaking, so I re-tapped it. I think what happened was in my tap, because I didn't use any fluid, I actually got a burr stuck in the tap, and when I pulled it out, you can't see it now because I took it out. When I pulled it out, it ganked all the threads with it, and then when I screwed in this piece, clearly it ganked the threads as well. So anyways, I re-tapped it, so we got some decent threads way down in there, and then we got some starters okay right here. But what I did was I chopped the end of this off and kind of gave it a good starter thread. It's not the most beautiful thing. I have another one on order. It won't be here till tonight. I really wanted to drive the car tomorrow. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna JB weld this thing in here because it does screw in. So we have some good contact. I think that's gonna be just fine. So I'm gonna mix up some JB. We're gonna throw it in there. I'm not gonna have any issues. Off we go. good morning. Here we are. So we got everything back together. I ended up JB welding that fitting in, which is whatever. As long as it holds, I don't care. It does have some threads to engage with, so I think it's going to be just fine. So I'm going to throw some water in it, and then we're going to see if it leaks. And if it does, I'm going to walk away because I got other things to do. Okay, well, I don't see anything obviously leaking. I think what I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to fire the engine up because we need to get some of this coolant moving through. The plan today is to drive the car. I have some places to go, so it would be great if everything was good to go. So the only thing I have to do other than put water in it is hook the fans up. It's a couple wires and some zip ties, so easy peasy. All right, let's fire it up. Test drive after the cooling system put back together. So I got on a little bit before I got here. Seems okay. The car is running a little bit warmer. It's at like 195, whereas it used to be like 193, but probably a marginal amount of flow difference in this cheap radiator. But it looks good. No leaks. Good to go. All right, so here's an update. I took the car for an hour-long trip one way. So we are down by the water. Wife wanted to go somewhere, so we went for a little drive. Car's running great. Put a little water in it. Other than that, seems to be fine. So we're just gonna drive it home. So here we are putting the car to work, sitting in traffic. Not currently, obviously. It's like 72 out, which is pretty nice weather actually. Car's staying cool. Temps are in check. Clutch is a little grabby. We're definitely getting to the point where it's, you know, broken in. But otherwise, the car's doing great. Even got the AC on, even though it's not working real good. Probably needs a recharge. Yay.